color start out at 18% and then move all the way down to 4% when they reach C-suite, right? Men of color start at 16% and then end up at 10% in the C-suite. That's a 6% drop, but the rest, like, there's a 14% drop for women of color. And of course, you can see white men, they actually grow. They go from like 35 to 68. So let's not even, so let's move to the next chart. So the next one is about the impact of, can't see here, the impact of race and career advancement. So there's white women, black women, men of color. And as you can see, the blue is black women, and black women actually has the highest, most negative impact on their career due to their ethnicity and gender. And lastly, is basically a chart showing how of science and engineering occupations, black women just make up tiny little 2%. And so this is all basically a visual representation of things you already know. But really, I want to make 2 points. The first one is that whether you intend to or not, you are paving the way for future women of color. And number 2 is that, unfortunately, your industry, your workplace, your field, it is currently not conducive for your maximum growth. That means you can be absolutely fantastic at what you do and provide a ton of value, but compared to someone who isn't a minority, you won't be nearly as recognized, even if you give more value than them. So the idea here, this whole workshop, is basically how can you overcome these innate setbacks in these industries. And one of the skills that you absolutely need to be able to overcome these setbacks is the ability to set the right goals, to set effective goals. Now, when it comes to goals, there's like a whole bunch of opinions, right? There are goal-getters who love setting goals. The type of people who are like every year, every couple of months, like just go, 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 go. And then there's the other side of the scale where it's just like, I don't care. I mean, goals, I guess I'll do some in the beginning of the year, but I'm not going to really stick to them. And, it's not really a big deal for me. I don't really care. I don't see what the big deal is with goals. So goals are important because of 3 things: path, marker, and vision. So path is essentially, it is creating a path. If you create goals for the rest of the year, you know where you're headed. And this happens way too many times that if you don't have solid goals at the end of the year, you're kind of thinking like, I don't feel like I really progressed much in work. I don't know where, I feel like I just kind of live through it, like day to day. I didn't really see the big picture. I don't feel like I really made much changes. And it gives you a path so that you can also choose, it helps you with decision making. So there's going to be tons of opportunities coming your way. People are going to be asking you to help with their project, here, this and that. But when you have a path, it becomes clear what you can take on and what you should not take on, because it's so easy to overextend yourself. How often, when I was working in blockchain, like any opportunity that came my way, I was like, yes, 100%, let's do this, right? Because why not? You want to just help everyone. Why not? It's fun, it's great. But at the end of the day, even if you have the best team on earth, you are the one that needs to look out for yourself. And no one's there looking at you, looking like, oh, look at all these amazing things she did. Let's promote her, or let's give her a raise. No, it has to be you making strategic decisions about where you put your time and effort. Now, the next one is a marker. So when you look at your goals this year and you look at your goals last year, it's kind of like, it gives you an ability to self-check in. Maybe last year you had an income goal and you wanted to network more. And then this year, you're like, I want to start a side business and I want to know about the business side of my organization. Now, when you look at the difference between that person back then and the woman today, you can kind of see like, am I growing to the person that I want to be? Do I like this type of growth? Or do I feel like I might be a bit distracted, or I don't, or, this doesn't feel like it aligns with who I am? So goals are also a marker, like a flag. And lastly, it is vision, which is the more common one. It's basically steps to fulfill your why, right? This is the one that most people know. This is why goals are even here for. Where do you see yourself in 10 years and how do you get there? That's with goals. So path, marker, and vision. Now, with all of that said, I would like to know, what are your goals this year and what is the path you've created for yourself for 2021? And what I mean by that is, considering your last year, what are you going to say no to this year? Now, let's move on to the next one, which is marker, and compare yourself to when you set your goals last year. How do you feel like you've changed? I mean, that 2020 was not an easy year. So maybe you can say I've become more jaded, which is a completely fine response. Does anyone want to kind of feel, if you think about your goals last year, think about the person who created the goals in the beginning of 2020 and the person today, where are you at? Like, how do you feel like you've grown? Let's go on to the last point, which is vision. So be as bold as possible. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? So just to recap that, goals, path, market, and vision. Now that we've shared this, we talked about this, I'm going to talk about the most common mistakes people make when it comes to creating your goals and implementing your goals. At the end of the day, you know what's best for you. It's all about the way I go about my work as well. It's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to make sure the foundations are right so that you come up with it yourself. And that's kind of how things should always be. So we're going to split it into creation, like common mistakes when it comes to creation and common mistakes when it comes to implementation. So starting off is creation. Now, the first big mistake I see a lot of people make is not creating from a place of inspiration. Now, when you just finished an amazing project or your boss just complimented you for something and you're feeling that high is when you're supposed to be feeling that when you create your goals, because that's when you're like, I can do this, I'm inspired, I'm amazing. But of course you can't get that, you can't time that, right? So even if you have, like, let's say it's the beginning of the year and you're sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to write my goals today morning. I'm going to wake up, have my coffee, and set your goals. Even if it's not a bad day, that's still not the energy that is best for your goal setting, goal creation. So what I usually say is watch YouTube videos, like watch like TEDx videos, things that inspire you, or read articles that really get you feeling like, wow, like really inspire you from people you look up to. For example, personally, there are two things that I like to watch and read whenever I feel like I need to be inspired. The first one is about the founder of Canva, this, late 20s, and now she's in the early 30s. She created Canva when she was just in university, and I used Canva to make this presentation. Canva's everywhere. Everyone knows Canva. And believe it or not, she went over to New York and she pitched her, like, the idea of Canva to over 100 investors, and she just got flat no's 100 times, like over 100 times. Just no, 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 no. And somehow she just kept sticking to it, and she just managed to finally find an investor. When I think about that, I'm like, would I be able to stand here and get 100 no's for something and still be like, I'm gonna do it? But even if you have the best team in the world, like your best friends, all your friends are like cheering you on, after you get like I would imagine the 30th, you're gonna be like, okay, this is not, any person will think like I'm crazy for trying this out. But she went get over 100 rejections and still went forward, right? That makes me like very inspired. And same thing with the another thing I like to read about is Elvis. So Elvis, when he was 19, he was like a truck driver, and when he decided to audition for singing in a band, his truck manager, like the truck driver manager, told him, like, after hearing him sing, and said, yeah, you have no potential, you're going to be a truck driver for the rest of your life. And he heard so many of those things, like, you're just a terrible singer, and he kept going. And that kind of story, like, makes me like just completely gives me this high, like, okay, I can completely do this, like 100 notes, come on. So with that said, what inspires and motivates you? I would love to hear some of the things that you guys do to kind of get you that feeling. Let's go on to the next common mistake, and that's being pressured to conform to conventional indicators of success. Now, of course, leadership is great. I mean, that's why we're here, and income is great, but there's so much more that actually creates that we need to be happy, that there's these two. And yet somehow sometimes leadership and income is like the only thing that everyone focuses on. And while they're okay, if there's completely fine goals, there has to be more than those two as well, to make us to make us feel happy in our career. And I'm going to share with you a chart. So among employees who want to be top executives, here is what people say they are motivated by. And we have financial security, opportunity to be a role model for others like me, opportunity to impact the success of my company, opportunity to influence the culture of my workplace, and opportunity to use my position to have a positive impact on the world. And if we look at Black women, um, the most is, everyone, for everyone, opportunity to impact the success of my company is pretty much, everyone's the same. But for Black women, and the opportunity to be a role model for others like me, and the opportunity to influence the culture of my workplace are the two really high compared to everyone else. And we're going to compare it to, just men. You would see that there's 30% of men who care about being role models, whereas 49% of Black women care about being role models to others like them. And when it comes to opportunity to influence the culture of the workplace, it's 44, whereas whopping 52 for Black women. Now, with that said, there's so much more to just to the goals and just like how much you're making and what position you're in. So opportunity to influence the culture of your workplace, and also maybe you like working in smaller teams. Maybe you want to take on projects that have more a certain vision that you really like. So it's not just the thing that everyone focuses on. And with that said, like, what not so popular goals do you have? I want to get a promotion. I want to step up and get a new role. These are very common, very exciting goals. But what about the not so conventional ones? I did want to share one, which is back when I was working in blockchain, I wanted to make it a thing within the office for my the CEO and I to have like bi-monthly meetings on the health of everyone in the team in terms of their mental health and where they're at. Even though that wasn't my job at all, I wanted to make sure there was no HR at that moment. Team of like about 20. And I wanted to be like, you know what, I want to make it a thing that we care about the individual health, like mental health and happiness of everyone. So I wanted, like, I made a thing that I wanted to incorporate into like every twice a month we're gonna do it. So that was like a very not so popular goal. I've never even heard anyone doing that. Making the CEO take off time twice a month to sit down and talk about, okay, so this person is not feeling super motivated. I think you need to give this and give that. So I wanted to create that environment for everyone. So that would be my not so popular goal back then. Now the next one is a big one. Being unaware of your innate biases and tendencies. So this is actually where a lot of my work kind of focuses on, right? When I work one-on-one with people, I uncover all the little things that happen in their childhood that kind of basically influence their personality structure and all the biases they have, that's really holding them back in their career and how they feel about themselves. And we kind of uncover that in work outside of like break out of those patterns. But since I can't do that one-on-one with everyone now, I'm going to share like the most common patterns, the common beliefs that kind of hold everyone back professionally that I've come across. The first one is money blocks, right? Um, if you ever grew up like me, like in terms of bill to bill, you're just kind of living paycheck to paycheck, and money was kind of hard to come by. It becomes, you end up having a very distorted view of value and income, where you always feel like, I don't know if I should ask for more. And this would seriously impact when, for example, when you're applying for jobs, when you're asking for how much you want to earn, like how much you want, or when it's asking for a raise. And then there's this underlying fear of like, oh, I don't know if what I'm asking is even like, do I actually bring that much value? And there's this really big money block of just being scared to ask for more. And like when it comes, like I think Yumna, like when you're mentioning being an entrepreneur, like having to charge for your services as well, like that's one of those big things that people are afraid of. Like, am I charging? How much do I charge? And when you start off, you just don't feel like because it's just up to you. And naturally, you want to charge small, and like there's so many things with that, right? Like how much value am I actually bringing? And so you end up having a distorted view of value income, and also having associating income with the type of person. This one comes up all the time. When you think about someone who has a lot of money, um, it's usually a type of personality, like go-getter type. So you think, oh, I'm, more reserved, more introverted. Like you don't think of that person earning a lot of money, and that influences like it has a lot of influence on how you kind of create your goals and whether how much you want to ask for example, like let's say you have an income goal, it's going to seriously impact, like influence how much you're going to ask and how you even ask, right? So with that said, do you feel like a sense of sense of being scared to ask for more, even though there it has been like 2020 was really rough on a lot of organizations? I also saw many thriving, many like absolutely thriving. And I mean, even Airbnb you would think would have done badly, they actually managed to do pretty well. So considering that, absolutely like know your organization, like know where they're actually at, but don't be afraid if they're doing fine. I think if you see an opportunity, it's so important to take it. I know I have a friend of mine, and he's a senior engineer, and he applied to work at a car riding service, like a car, like, it's like Uber, but like here in Asia. So you would think like nobody's leaving their house. So how on earth nobody's really leaving their house? So how would it work? And that was not even a thing in his mind, right? So he ends up going in there and asking. They were saying, okay, we're gonna pay you 200K. So as a senior engineer, we're gonna pay you 200K, and he's like, well, if I move to Silicon Valley right now, I could get 350. So I'm only accepting 250 minimum. And you just think like, what? Why would not you say that? You start, nobody's taking rides even. But believe it or not, they actually said, okay, they said okay, right? And when I heard that, I was like, okay, so it's the same idea when he kind of shared. Whenever people, they tell you, oh, we don't have much, we haven't allocated that much budget. Usually, it's not the case. Now, that's not to say like go and be like aggressive and say give me money, but at the same time, I think a lot of us has the tendency to go like the opposite extreme and not really push forward. So now that you've taken steps, especially like last year you've been taking steps, 2019 you've been taking steps. Like I think right now think about how you can kind of push that even more, because it's very uncomfortable. But then again, there are many examples of people actually earning more in 2020 and 2021 than before actually. So kind of look into that, see the opportunities there, because it's actually like both sides. A lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people are actually doing better. So it's kind of extremes on both sides. Let's go to the next point, which is being the support. I think this one's so important, especially when you are an introvert, which I am as well. Like for the longest time, I assumed that I was just the support. I wanted to be that background person, and I assumed I wasn't the leader type, or I had some kind of idea like the leader type needs to be like this loud, walk in the room, command all the attention. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm actually intimidated of that kind of people. I love leaders who are more like empathetic, and they're warm, and they're not imposing. So with that said, it made me realize, wait, I actually have that ability to be a leader, because, even though I'm not like that person who I always thought that's the only type of leader. So do any one of you feel like you do have the tendency to think I'm the support, I'm the background person, I like to support, I don't want to be center stage? Next one is chronic underselling. This is when like we've been discussing this thread for the entire time, which is like this pattern of undervaluing your own abilities and overblowing your mistakes. So if you hear pretty often that your loved ones are saying, oh, you deserve so much more, or you're not getting treated your worth, that is a sign that yes, you have this you have chronic underselling, you're suffering from chronic underselling. And that is usually a pattern that is created in childhood, and it kind of propagates through adulthood. And it's basically like it's when you do something amazing, when you have like a win, and then you celebrate it for the next few days. But as soon as you have a mistake, like that mistake, like you make a tiny mistake at work, and that becomes like your focus on how you're just not good enough, right? It's like when like when you're trying to shop for something online and you're looking for reviews and you see this product, you see the reviews, it's like so many 5-star reviews and you're like, wow, this is an amazing product, amazing. And then after seeing like 100 5-star reviews, you see 1-star review and you're like, I don't trust this product. I'm not sure, am I taking a risk with this product? Like the instant that feeling you get, like where it's like you just saw 100 5-stars, how can 1-star just make you feel like, I'm not sure about it anymore? That's pretty much what chronic underselling is. And so often when like do you feel so often like you'd see like colleagues, and this when I was working in blockchain, I would see people kind of do that, right? I would see like such capable people just not sell themselves well, whether it comes to like compensation, like with the amount that they're asking for, but also like I would see an example. I have a client now, she's a lawyer and she's currently right below senior associate. So she has this opportunity, like rare opportunity, that her senior is going to be busy for 3 months. And he said, do you want to take over and manage this project, manage this case for me? And when I come back, I'll take it over. Or do you want to, if you think it's too much for you, you can just kind of, I'll move you to another team and you'll be guided by some other senior. And she actually said like, oh, maybe, I'm not sure. I think I should be guided. I'm not sure if I know enough. And from the outside, it's just like you have this rare opportunity to prove your worth and work your way, like to actually have that opportunity to kind of lead and prove your worth, yet you don't think you're good enough. And from the outside, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I'd like to know, can you remember a time when you kind of talked yourself down, or like gave up an opportunity because you thought you weren't capable? The next one, the last quick point, is not involving your boss or higher up. Of course, you need to have a healthy relationship with your boss or manager higher up. But one of these small little things have this small little change has can create such a big impact, which is letting your boss know what your goals are so that they can kind of throw up opportunities at you because they know where you're headed. So sharing that, because most people don't actually think of doing that, like having that conversation with their boss, but it is a complete game changer, especially and only if you have a healthy relationship with your higher up. If you don't, I think that should be one of your goals, is to somehow create that relationship, a healthy relationship with your higher up. Now that would be the end of the creation, which is the bulk of the common mistakes. The next one we're going to quickly move through is implementation. Now, when it comes to implementation, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen is people being unaware of the habits and structures that motivate them. So I've come across two very specific types: community-driven and vision-driven type people. So community-driven, these are people who they're terrible, like quite terrible at kind of hitting their own goals. But when they're in a group, when they have an accountability group, they are able to fulfill them perfectly because they're driven by knowing that people count on them, or people are going to check in on them. So the vision driven is basically people who are driven by their why. So they kind of need like frequent inputs of like why they're doing what they're doing, either daily or weekly. So they kind of feel inspired to keep going. So when it comes to these kind of styles of motivation, I always see that, especially with community-driven people, they shame themselves for being such. Like I know people who just can hit their goals without needing all of these extra things. Like, why must I have these things? But really, there's no point shaming what works for you. For example, they always say like breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and I cannot have breakfast. I would fall asleep anytime I cannot eat first thing in the morning. I just can't. So all these, it's so easy to be like just kind of force it in, but the truth is it just doesn't work for me. And I would keep hearing like, oh, you should definitely keep breakfast. And community driven people hear that, which is like, oh, you should be able to do it yourself. You don't need a group to check in on you. Like, that's kind of weak, don't you think? Shouldn't you be able to do it yourself? But the truth is, no, that's just what works for you. So even with the people who's here, like if you are community driven and you realize whenever I do things in a team, or I have like people, who are on the same journey with me, I just happen to do it a lot better. Don't try to fight it, and create an accountability group. Like maybe with a few people here actually in the workshop today, like create an accountability group and don't be ashamed by it. And for the vision driven, it's all about practice, right? Like every morning kind of repeating like your goals and like remembering why you're doing any of this. So the last one is keeping it too vague, too broad, and not having small milestones. Like if your goal, for example, is to be better at networking, it's not that's it has to be like a specific tangible number. Like I want to go to one online networking event a week or one every 2 weeks. It has to be quantified like that. No matter what the goal is, it has to be quantified. Keeping it vague and it's not gonna keep you motivated because you don't have those small wins. You have to be able to create those mini wins, mini milestones for even your personal development goals. It is, and this is one of the big ones I always see where it's like their goal is very, like an umbrella term, and they kind of leave it as that like, oh, I want to hopefully kind of talk to my boss about getting a raise at the end of the year. It's just so vague, but what can you do to get there? What kind of steps can you take? Can you, sit down with your boss maybe and discuss what metrics are important in the, that he's currently focusing on, and how is the work I'm doing affecting those metrics? Like these are actual steps. So that is it, guys. Like the importance of let me just recap. The importance of goals is path marker and vision. And when it comes to creating goals, these are things you need to remember not to fall into. And no inspiration, focusing on conventional top level metrics, your relationship with money, assuming the supportive role, chronic underselling, and not involving your boss or higher ups. And when it comes to implementation is finding what actually works for you and being vague and not setting small milestones. So basically when you are creating your goals, like I always said, it's all about creating the right foundation, and then most of the time, all the time actually, you end up being inspired to create the goals that's right for you. This is all about setting the right foundation. So thank you so much. That's pretty much, that is it. I would love, anyone have any questions, like please let's ask away.